What's going on, guys? I'm Tommy, and I'm coming at you with an action figure review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Hasbro The Black Series Tusken Raider Halloween Edition. I've been really enjoying Hasbro's Halloween Edition line, and I feel like it's been generally getting better with each year. Last year, I really enjoyed the soft goods elements they implemented with the figures. However, this year, it is definitely the character selection and the creative choices they made with the characters that really make this year's wave stand out. The Tusken Raider here seems to be a play on the Invisible Man, a classic Halloween monster. I did pick this figure up through an order on Walmart's app. If you're looking for the link, as the listing hasn't been updated to the official name of the figure as of the release of this review, then you can check that out in my Discord server, link in the description below. I do also know that this figure and the other two figures from the same wave are also showing up at Walmart locations here in the US. Of course, let's start things off taking a look at the packaging. So here we have the standard style of packaging for the Black Series with a little bit of a twist for the Halloween theme. On the top here on the front of the box, you can see our Black Series logo with the outline done in orange as opposed to gray. And then on the background here, where we would usually have just a very drab gray color, we have a little bit of a print, which is kind of fun. You have some TIE fighters in there. You can see the Death Star 2, Stormtrooper helmets. You can also see Vader's helmet in the form of a skull, which is fun. And then we have this nice big window here showing you the figure, his companion, and his accessory. Down below the window, we have in some nice Halloween text the name of the character as well as the Halloween edition, some logos and legalese down at the bottom. On this side of the box, in place of how they usually do the mural art for the characters, we have a really cool illustration of the Tusken Raider as the Invisible Man. You can see the Halloween text for the name down at the bottom once again. On the back of the box, you can see the same illustration that we saw on the side of the box, just blown up a little bit. You can see your Black Series logo and a bio in about 1,000 different languages. This bio reads, "Celebrate the season with specially designed Star Wars figures from the Black Series." You can see the character name once again, all our legalese at the bottom. Guys, please don't feed this action figure to your babies. On this side of the box, you can see a little bit more of that Halloween printing that looks really cool. This time we can see a spider web and a lightning bolt included too. You can see the wraparound window. We have our banner here with some ooze coming out the bottom, as well as our Black Series logo once again. On the bottom of the box, even more legalese, and on the top, this is really cool. You can see the illustrations for all three of the characters from this year's wave. So with that, that covers the packaging. Let's get this guy opened and we'll check him out. Alright guys, here is the Invisible Man out of the box, and I have to say, they did a really impressive job of making him look invisible. Easily one of the worst and cringiest jokes I've ever made on a Black Series review. So getting into the actual figure itself, he does come with an accessory. Now the accessory that Hasbro went with for the base sculpt on this is Watto's data pad. So this piece first came out with the Watto single pack figure that came out towards the beginning of the year, or at least he was revealed at the beginning of the year. The sculpt is done in a silver plastic, and then you can see they did print onto the screen a picture of the Invisible Man, who is only identified by his goggles and his hat. This is a fun little novel comical accessory that I think was a clever inclusion for this release. Now, a theme that they've been doing from the very beginning with these Halloween edition releases is including some sort of companion in the form of some sort of small character that they've already sculpted for the line. This time around, they went with the sculpt for BD1. Now, I have to give Hasbro props here because it seems like BD is actually sculpted in clear plastic, and they actually painted on all of the black on the top of his head, because if you look at the base of the head behind the photoreceptors here, you can kind of tell that's clear plastic. So very well done there. I also like that the paint on the photoreceptors is a glossier black than that of the actual top of the head of the figure. As opposed to the rest of the figure, he's just done in some clear plastic. He does have some limited articulation. There is a ball joint that connects the head to the top of the body. You can see you can get some decent range out of that. You can get the figure to look down a little bit, look up a little bit. You can get some good tilt, which is good for this type of character, and of course your right and your left. Then there are some ball joints at the, I guess I would call them the hips of this figure. You can see you can get some nice movement out of those as well. They do swivel. If they weren't blocked by the head, they could do a full 360 degrees. There's a swivel here at the dog leg articulation. That also would move a full 360 degrees if you didn't have the limitations of it bumping into the body. But other than that, it's a pretty simple accessory, but you can get a lot of the iconic BD droid style poses that we especially see in the Jedi games. Then of course we have our Tusken Raider here. So this guy's very, very basic. He does technically come with an accessory. It's a removable piece, and this is going to be such a nitpick. I try to be a little less nitpicky with the holiday figures because I get the primary function of these is to be fun and is to be silly, but a little bit of a disappointment that I have is that the hat, which is sculpted from the Book of Boba Fett Cad Bane hat, is completely loose. There's nothing that connects this to the figure. You probably would have seen when I did my little montage of taking this out of the box. It just pops right off. It just kind of sits loosely on his head, so just be wary of that. It's not a huge deal, but it is something that just as a collector, it's like, yeah, you kind of, I guess, mash it on his head, but it just doesn't want to stay there. It does balance on his head nicely, though. The hat itself is done in just black plastic. There's no paint apps or anything applied to this, which is completely fine for a fun release like this. Then, of course, we have the Tusken Raider, aka the Invisible Man, and this figure is extremely basic. I don't think there's any paint on this figure whatsoever. This is just the same Tusken Raider figure that Hasbro has released several times throughout the Black Series lifespan. However, he's just missing his soft goods that drape over his shoulders. The omission of the soft goods here is completely fine by me because it doesn't really fit the design of the Invisible Man. So the entire figure is done in clear, translucent plastic. You'll see that different pieces of the figure have different levels of transparency to them. Like the torso is very solid and very transparent. You can see my finger through the back of the figure. However, it's much more translucent when you look at the more malleable plastic that makes up the overlay for the skirt piece here. It's going to be really hard for me to even talk about sculpted detail on a figure like this, just because it's all clear. It's very difficult to see. However, they did include some black plastic pieces for his eye stalks there, and that is a fun inclusion to mimic the Invisible Man's goggles. You can kind of see the pins that go into the head are done in black. This is assembled pretty much like any basic Hasbro The Black Series action figure. Again, the only extra piece kind of being this very malleable plastic overlay, which should help us with articulation at the legs. Other than that, no paint applications, no weathering, and in this case, that's completely fine by me. So let's take a look at the Tusken Raider's articulation. So I will let you know now, the Tusken Raider is a little bit of an older sculpt for the Black Series, so you'll probably notice some very dated articulation to today's standards in 2026. The Tusken has a ball and hinge system for the neck instead of the dumbbell joint that they use for newer figures. So you can see you can kind of get him to look down a little bit by utilizing that hinge. You can get him to look up pretty well, actually. You can get some little bit of tilt, not too much out of that, but also some right and some left. As for the shoulders, he does not have butterfly joints, just your regular hinge and swivel. So the hinge is going to get you to a little past that 90-degree mark, which is good. And then we have the 360-degree swivel. We also have a hinge and swivel at the elbows, which is going to get us to about a 90-degree bend, maybe just ever so shy of that. And we have a swivel at the top of the elbow as well. And then for the wrists, we have another hinge and swivel. So the right hand, which is sculpted in a trigger finger hand, we have a swivel with a horizontal hinge here. And then we have on the left hand the exact same thing. This is more of a C gripping hand done with the horizontal hinge and swivel. I will say this is something I do not miss about older Black Series figures, them giving both hands the horizontal hinges. Our Tusken Raider has a ball joint at the waist, which is going to get you some pretty limited range here, but it's good enough. I mean, again, this isn't the most acrobatic character in Star Wars. Then, of course, down at the hips, we've got another ball joint system here. You can see that the way these move, the overlays, front and back, move themselves right out of the way with no problem at all for as thick as they are. I think with a character like this, I always am going to say I prefer soft goods, even with the textured fabric, or I would actually even prefer a mixed media approach. I just think this looks a little clunky when you're trying to pose the figure around. This being an older figure, he does feature a cut for a thigh swivel, so you can see if I, unlock that a little bit, that does have range. Then he has the dreaded pinned double jointed knees, which I'm so over in the Black Series line. However, the advantage to the pinned double jointed knees is that they can get a lot more range than these single jointed knees do. Other than looking ugly, they do have more range. And then, of course, down at the ankles, we have our forward-facing pin for rocker, as well as a hinge, which gets you some nice forward and some very nice back, too. So overall, some dated articulation. It's got some advantages and range, like at the knees and the ankles, but some other places where it is quite dated and it's quite visible. Thankfully, this is based on the Invisible Man, so it's much less noticeable. All right, so taking a look at accessories, I'm actually just going to hold off on putting the hat back on the figure just yet because it's just going to fall off. The data pad piece might prove to be a little hard to fit into the hand, so I'd recommend putting it in from the top by the pointer finger and the thumb. That's how you can kind of get a decent grip on it when you want him to look at it in one hand here, you can get some good over-the-shoulder poses like this, and it does pass the shake test this way. And you can see here I've got a good over-the-shoulder pose here, and then I'll also throw in our little BD droid here, our invisible BD. He looks great. It may be dated articulation, but you can still achieve a one-legged running pose with this character. He's got a pretty solid center of gravity, but again, you can kind of see in a pose like this, and I'll be mindful of the hat again, you'll see the hard plastic approach. While it does look good for these thicker, more textured, layered fabric choices for the costumes, it just is very clunky, and something like that just tends to give a traffic cone effect to the figure. But with that, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this brief review on this figure. This release is fun. I love when they do the monster-inspired ideas for these characters, and I think that the Tusken Raider was a really clever choice. A little bit annoying that the hat doesn't actually sit nicely on the head and it falls right off, but as you saw in the video, I got him in several different poses and he looks just fine. But with that, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this review. If you enjoyed and you're not yet subscribed, subscribe to Blitz Transmissions. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. If you'd like to get all my content early, access to monthly giveaways and more awesome benefits, the link to the ARC Trooper tier of the Blitz Transmissions Patreon can be found in the description below. If you're just a fan of the reviews or you want to support the YouTube channel more directly, you could also check out my YouTube channel membership, Rancor Battalion. Just 99 cents a month. You get exclusive stickers, badges, priority replies, and early reviews on YouTube here. If you're interested in merch, joining the Discord, or any of my other social media, the links to those can be found in the description below. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll catch you for the next one, and may the Force be with you.
Breaking off. All units, fire at will. 4-2, pick a target. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. Gotta hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit. Where's our